Jamie Carter's life had always teetered between two worlds, the polished corridors of corporate law and the untamed whispers of the forest. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains' secluded foothills, her grandmother's renovated cabin stood like a waypoint between those realms. 20 acres of pine-scented solitude, where Jamie brewed her coffee each dawn and watched the mist curl around ancient trunks. 3 years earlier, she traded courtroom battles for shutter clicks, chasing elusive wildlife instead of legal briefs. But nothing in her new career prepared her for the day a mother bobcat, weary from hunger and the winter's chill, would scratch at her door with a tiny, injured plea at her feet. From the first moment, the bobcat was a phantom among the pines. In early October, when the foothills blazed with red and gold, Jamie froze mid-sip as amber eyes peeked from behind a brush of rhododendron. The cat's spotted coat melted into the leaf litter, its live form a silent promise of wilderness still intact. Jamie's hands trembled as she raised her telephoto lens, capturing a dozen frames of graceful caution before the bobcat disappeared into the undergrowth. That fleeting encounter ignited a fierce longing in Jamie's heart, to bridge the gap between her human world and this wild spirit's realm. Daybreak after daybreak, Jamie ritualized their silent conversation. She stationed raw chicken in a shallow dish at the clearing's edge, far enough to avoid startling the feline, yet close enough to be seen from her porch. For 4 mornings, raccoons and opossums claimed her offerings. But on the 5th, golden eyes emerged from the snow-dusted pines. The bobcat approached in measured steps, nostrils flaring as she sniffed the chicken, then devoured it before vanishing like a dream. Just a little help through winter. Jamie whispered into the hush, ... unaware how deeply that act of kindness would bind their fates. As November yielded to December, the forest donned its winter coat. Silent, stark, and indifferent, the bobcat's visits lengthened. She lingered in the pale sunshine, her fur ruffling in the chill breeze. One evening, Jamie's sister Kate teased over the phone. "You call feeding a wild predator friendship, Jamie?" Jamie laughed, stirring steam into the cold air. "Not friends," she corrected, "peaceful coexisters." Yet every paw print beside the bobcats, smaller, more delicate, whispered of motherhood. Tracks side by side suggested a hidden life, a kitten growing under her mother's watchful eye. Then came the storm, a January wrath that dumped over 2 feet of snow and howled like a captive spirit for 3 days. Jamie tended her wood stove, her eyes on the gale-lashed window. When the sky finally cleared, she trudged through drifts to refill her makeshift feeding shelter and found familiar tracks. Only one set. She squinted at the trail, puzzled by its erratic swerve. "Where's your little one?" she murmured, heart tightening. That question echoed in her mind as the forest settled into crystalline stillness. Morning revealed the answer in the most unexpected way. Jamie was at her desk, editing photos, when a deliberate tapping stopped her breath. She crept to the window and saw the bobcat on her porch. Bold, fearful, and fierce all at once. At her paws lay a quivering bundle, a snow-streaked kitten, its hind leg twisted grotesquely. Jamie's pulse thundered as the mother's amber gaze met hers, communicating both dread and hope. In that suspended moment, Jamie realized the wild cat had chosen her as savior. Her first call was to Dr. Eleanor Martin, the state biologist who had cautioned her about feeding wild predators. "Unprecedented," Dr. Martin breathed over the crackling phone line. "If she brought you her kitten, time is critical." Detailed instructions followed. Gather thick gloves, a towel, a carrier, and be ready to separate mother and child. Jamie's stomach knotted at the thought of betrayal, yet she knew no other choice. "I'll help," she whispered, setting out a plate of chicken to distract the mother. Moments later, Jamie edged onto the porch. The mother bobcat's low growl vibrated the air, but she held her ground as Jamie scooped the kitten. It was cold, scarcely moving, its chest rising in ragged breaths. Tears blurred Jamie's vision as she wrapped the tiny bobcat in a towel and lifted him into the carrier. The mother paced, torn between rescue trust and wild instinct. "I'll bring him back," Jamie vowed, though she knew how fragile such promises could be. The roads to Blue Ridge Wildlife Rehabilitation Center were treacherous sheets of ice and snow. For 3 tense hours, Jamie spoke softly to the kitten, now dubbed Milo in her mind. "Stay with me, little one," she urged, glancing at the carrier as if expecting movement beyond shallow breaths. Dr. Martin had called ahead. Staff stood ready when Jaime burst through the doors, frost in her hair and hope in her eyes. Milo's diagnosis was grim. Compound fractures in his tibia and fibula, hypothermia, malnutrition. Dr. Whittaker, the centre's wildlife vet, laid it out gently. His injuries are severe, but he's young and resilient. 2 hours of surgery and warming blankets later. Milo lay bundled in the recovery room. Jaime hovered, her mind spinning with guilt and relief. Could this wild creature ever return to the forest she'd drawn him from? Over the following weeks, Jaime made the 3-hour pilgrimage again and again. Each visit, she watched protocols designed to preserve Milo's wild nature. No human feeding, minimal handling, audio recordings of forest sounds. Yet despite these measures, Milo's bright eyes tracked every person in the room, curiosity edging out fear. Dr. Whittaker frowned in late February as Milo limped playfully in his indoor pen. "He's becoming habituated," the vet warned. "That jeopardizes any chance of release." Jamie's heart clenched with conflicting desires. Promise to the mother versus responsibility for Milo's welfare. Spring's first buds appeared as specialists convened. Months of assessment culminated in a unanimous conclusion. Milo could not go back to the wild. He'd lost the necessary wariness of humans. That night, Jamie wept in a roadside motel as she recounted the verdict to Kate. "I promised his mother," she sobbed. Kate's gentle voice reminded her of another path. Permanent care under Jamie's roof, through the Rehabilitation Centre's home program. It would mean certification courses, building a secure enclosure, an unconventional life for a bobcat, but perhaps the best chance. Within days, Jamie was immersed in coursework. Bobcat behavior, habitat design, enrichment techniques. Contractors shaped her property into a sanctuary. Tall posts for climbing, natural boulders the perching, a winding artificial stream trickling through dense shrubs. All the while, the mother bobcat watched from the wood's edge, silently acknowledging Jamie's efforts. "He's doing well," Jamie whispered to the forest, as if the wild cat could understand. Late April arrived with mountain laurel in bloom and Milo's transport day at hand. Dr. Whittaker accompanied Jamie as she cradled the now 8-month-old bobcat in a specialized crate. Heart-hammering, she watched Milo poke his nose out, scenting the fresh spring air in his new enclosure. Step by cautious step, he emerged, fluid, alert, and strangely confident. "He's accepting it," Dr. Whittaker breathed. Jamie exhaled the tension she hadn't known she was holding. Days passed, and Jamie settled into a rhythm. Refill the feeder, check Milo's cast, now removed. Photograph his exploration of climbing ledges. Then, at dusk one evening, the mother appeared. Jamie froze as the wild bobcat slipped through the clearing and approached Milo's enclosure. Through the mesh, mother and son locked eyes. Amber meeting Amber, in a silent dialogue older than words. Tears pricked Jamie's eyes as she watched the gentle reunion, understanding that though Milo's path diverged from the forest, his mother's trust endured. Summer deepened, and the mother's visits grew sparse but consistent, her silhouette a living testament to the fragile bridge between wild and human worlds. Jamie installed trail cameras capturing solitary patrols at the property's edge, proof of a bond that defied instinct. As she compiled her third photography book, she wove their story into its pages, a narrative of trust handed across species, of promises tested by storms and shaped by compassion. In those Blue Ridge Mountains, Jamie realized the greatest gift wasn't Milo's survival. It was the trust of a wild mother who, in desperation, had knocked at a human door and changed 2 lives forever.